But going forward, people are going to want to start to see and hear more detail. So I'm telling Dr. Carson now that he's going to have to be able to learn how to be more detailed in his answers. And the same with Donald Trump. He's going to have to be able to be more detailed. And that goes for all of them. It doesn't matter who they are. And those who are not going to be more detailed, they're going to lose. They're going to get left behind. They're going to end up dropping out of the race. This is probably about the only time that they're going to be allowed to get away with being generalized in their answers and not giving more specific details. Because as we actually start getting closer to pulling the lever and voting for these people, voters are going to want to know details. And the candidate that can emote the details the clearest is going to win. Now, this is, look, Obama, people, you can't really honestly say that everybody who voted for Obama really agreed with most of what he was saying or most of his potential policies back when he was campaigning. But he was more detailed than Hillary Clinton. Look, Hillary just put out this new plan today for free college, kind of like Bernie Sanders. But you know what? She's going to have to be, her and Bernie, they're going to have to be extremely detailed about this because people are going to want to know, well, how are we, the taxpayer, going to pay for this? I know that the politicians like to say, well, the government's going to pay for it. Well, no. Well, American people aren't that stupid anymore. We're not that, we're a little bit more sophisticated now. We fully understand that the government is us. The government's money is our tax money. So, and if the government doesn't think that it has enough tax money, the government's going to raise our taxes. So people pretty much understand that. So they're going to start asking the questions. Well, okay, this is $350 billion, Hill. How you intend to pay for it? The only way to pay for it is, raising somebody's taxes. Now, sure, a lot of people might say, well, raise the rich taxes. Well, fine, go ahead. But you can only raise the taxes on the rich so much, and it isn't going to cover every little stupid little, want that both sides of the political aisle seem to want the government to pay for. I don't care what, you start adding all that stuff up and there aren't enough rich people that have enough money to do it. The numbers don't work. Plain and simple. But, she's going to have to be, Clinton is going to have to get more detailed. Sanders is going to have to get more detailed in his plan as well. Just like all the candidates on the Republican side, they're all going to have to get more detailed. And, we'll see just how detailed they can possibly be and for people to fully understand them and agree with them. Because once the voter fully understands, next comes the process of getting them to agree with you. And I don't, on the left, I know the left, it's a large percentage of the population, but on the left, you can keep on doing the class warfare thing. Oh, the rich are getting away with murder, blah, blah, blah. Rich have all the money. Rich have this. Rich aren't paying their fair share and blah, blah, blah. Okay, some voters are going to buy into that. But I think the majority of voters are going to start saying, well, wait a minute. Well, you want the rich to pay for this? You want, for education, for health care, for this and that, and this and this and this. They don't have all that kind of money. We may say that they do, but, we may like to think that they do. But the reality is, I think a lot of people fully understand that the rich do not have an unlimited supply of cash. And as more and more people leave the middle class and get to the upper class, either by their own business or their job, moving up the ladder in their job, or a combination of both, they start hitting that six-figure mark. They start to be construed and be considered by the left as being the lucky ones and the rich. And as more and more people hit that six-figure mark and approach it, they're looking at themselves thinking, well, what the hell? We're not rich. And this is the one good thing about having a good economy, which is why, and I know this is a totally different topic, folks, but stay with me here because this is all put together here. This is all coming together here, so pay attention. You have to understand that as the economy heats up and people do well, that means that their salaries and their incomes increase. And as more and more people, especially with this internet economy, and it's not, if you put your mind to it and you have the right type of thing, I don't care what it is, just the right type of venue, you can make a very good living in this technology economy, this internet economy. I don't know how, when Obama first took office in 2009, back in 2008, 2009, I think there were less than 10 people on YouTube making $100,000 or more. Today, on YouTube, there is a plethora. I don't know the actual number, but it's thousands of people are making six figures off of YouTube. Now, you start adding that to people, regular mom and pop shops. I'm not talking big business, mom and pop shops who are also making or approaching the six-figure mark on places like Amazon and eBay and Etsy and other online stores and places. And you also talk about people who are able to build their own websites and blogs and make ridiculous amounts of money. There's a gentleman that I follow, John Chow. Now, look, you can say what you want. I don't read his blog very often because his blog is just a bunch of, nonsensical BS kind of. He blogs about blogging. That's what he blogs about. He blogs about blogging and having this so-called .com lifestyle. Now, from what I understand, the guy makes 7 figures off of his blogs. But he's not alone. Now, granted, he's a Canadian, but there are lots of Americans who are doing the same thing. Look, while I was at home, I got to watch something called extreme couponing. Now, I got a little curious about that. And I did a little bit of Googling and Binging. And I found out that there are just regular moms out there, stay-at-home moms, that blog about couponing and being frugal, and that a lot of them are making big money part-time. Now, I'm talking, more than they would make if they were going to a full-time job, making a median income of $36,000 to $38,000. A lot of these people, they do these estimates, and you can find this stuff out, estimated what the blog earns and that kind of thing. They're doing over $50,000 a year. Now, as their popularity keeps growing, their income is going to keep growing. And and if you combine their income with what their husband's income is, they're most likely at the six-figure mark. They do not consider themselves to be rich, which is why they continue to do all this couponing kind of stuff, right? So you got to ask, as people start to realize that, they're approaching the so-called rich threshold and they don't view themselves as rich, they're going to start looking at all these people on the left who are not pulling their weight and who are being jealous of success of other people who are actually going to work and actually trying to produce something on a daily basis. They're not going to you're going to have a definite divide of class warfare. And as more and more people go beyond that point, now a lot of people are saying, well, the $15 an hour minimum wage, a lot of workers are finding out that is not the panacea that they thought that they were told it was going to be. And we can see it in certain places in the country where the minimum wage has gone up to $15 an hour. These people are real. Wait a minute, $15 an hour. Well, no, I'm not going to be able to get certain government welfare benefits because I'm earning too much. But it isn't going to be enough to make me feel better or live better. So they're asking to have their hours cut. So instead of working 25 hours, they're saying, hey, boss, only work me 18 to 20 hours. So I'm below that threshold because otherwise we lose money. So they're also learning. Now, whether all this comes together in time for the next election, people are starting to learn that all this stuff, all this class warfare really isn't going to benefit them. And I always ask the question, okay, if you think that the rich don't pay their fair share, fine. But how is that person who you think is rich getting taxed more going to help you? Does that put more money in your pocket if they tax that rich person more? 99.9% of the people say, well, actually, no. I don't get any more money when they tax them more. Well, why tax them then? So these are the types of things that these politicians, especially on the right, they're going to have to express this type of thing very clearly. They're going to have to emote this type of thought process and this type of factual identity, if you will, so that these people fully understand that they're being played. They're being played. And, whoever won the debate on Thursday, good for them. It's the first salvo. It's important. It's going to give certain people a good, strong base or a boost that they need to stay in that top tier as we continue going through this whole process like we normally do. But at the same time, those who are at the top, they can expect to be targets by the media. And let's face it, Carly Fiorina, a lot of people think that she won the debates. But now I'm already starting to hear people talking about Carly and her weaknesses. Hey, she was the chief of Hewlett Packard. She managed Hewlett Packard's decline. Well, that's going to be a historical fact that she's going to have to explain away at some point. Look, if they already tried hitting Donald with what, four business bankruptcies from four of his different companies. They already tried. Now if they did that to Donald, imagine them not wanting a Fiorina Clinton debate. They're going to want to knock Carly out. Can you imagine if they were hitting Donald already with his four bankruptcies of his four different businesses, what they're going to do to Carly with the venerable giant of Hewlett Packard losing half of its value under her reign as CEO? Can you imagine what they're going to do to her in that? I'm sure she's probably being coached and on that type of thing right now. But it's not going to be pretty. It won't be pretty. So she is going to, like everybody else, and some of these candidates are probably going to have to be even more clear than others, and I think she's one of them. They're going to have to be really extremely concise and clear about their message because they're going to be hit from all directions. And it's going to get to the point where the lamestream media is going to start, with sending ballistic missiles at the GOP candidates. It's going to make the Megyn Kelly Donald Trump spat look like a little playground, of third graders slapping each other. I'm telling you, it's going to get nasty, folks. It's going to get really nasty. And there are going to be candidates that aren't going to be able, it's going to get very hot. And there are candidates right now that are not going to be able to handle that kind of heat. And there are going to be candidates that can. Now, it remains to be seen who is going to remain by January of 2016. I've already said that there are a few people that definitely won't be, but I said one of those would be Dr. Carson, but if he can actually start sounding like himself and not like a polished politician, he may make that first cut. which would be a huge surprise to a lot of people.